Hello, everybody. We are Racing to Real Estate. We are your hosts, John Roberts and Josh Tucker. We're coming to you from the Duckworth studio here at the headquarters of Ankor Real Estate in Mooresville, North Carolina. This is our podcast with a twist. We got video along the way, and Josh, just a big overview of it here. We're talking about racing, and we're talking about real estate.
Yeah. So going to be a lot of fun. We keep on calling this a podcast. I'm not quite sure what to really call it since we got video. Some people call it a vodcast. Some people call it a webcast. I'm just going to call it a show.
Yeah, there you go.
We're not on TV.
It's going to be a good show, too.
A TV show, but we're going to call it a show. This is episode 1, season 1, and season 1 is going to be 12 episodes. Mm-hmm. It's mostly anchored or centered around the chase for the Sprint Cup. Or not Sprint Cup. That's me
Monster
messing
now.
up. Monster now. Yeah, used to be Sprint.
Used to be, still is to some.
Yeah, so mostly centered around that. 12 episodes, maybe 30 minutes long, maybe a little more in some situations if we have some guests. A few great things to note. You mentioned Duckworth Studio. Mm-hmm. We're extremely excited to have Duckworth as a sponsor of our episode or of our season 1. We are in the Ankor Real Estate offices located here in Mooresville, North Carolina. Yep. Gracious of them to open their offices up for us. Big thing, follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we are on Instagram. Follow us on there. We want your feedback. We want you to engage with us on social. We want your questions. Mm-hmm. So on social media, you can send us messages. You can use hashtag R2RE, which is R, the number 2, yep, and then RE. To ask questions.
We're going to be easy to find.
Yeah, we want to make it easy to find. To start with, the show is going to be hosted through YouTube. So make sure you go to YouTube, search for Racing to Real Estate. That's where all these episodes are going to show up. Hopefully starting next week, if not this week, we will also have the show on iTunes, mm-hmm, on SoundCloud, and on the Ankor Real Estate website, which is ankorre.com.
We also hope to have some great guests along the way, and we can tell you this for sure. Next time around on our next edition, next week, we're going to have 2-time NASCAR champion Greg Biffle is going to join us, and you will be very surprised as to why he's joining us, not just to talk about NASCAR, but he has a firm background in real estate, so he's going to be fun to talk to as well. So Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get here?
Yeah, so very quickly, my story is I was born and raised in Indiana, northern Indiana. I moved to Mooresville, North Carolina around end of 2002 to get into NASCAR. I didn't really know anybody, just came down here, started shaking some hands, started doing some interviews, got my foot in the door with a NASCAR team, worked my way up. I did some Xfinity racing. Back then it was the Busch series. I did some truck racing. Moved to Roush Fenway Racing. I believe it was in 2005, 4 or 5. Spent about 8 years at Roush. Moved my way up to the Cup level. Worked with drivers, mostly Carl Edwards. Also did a couple of seasons with Jamie McMurray. Did a season with David Reagan. Left Roush, went to Hendrick for a couple of seasons on the 48 and the 88 cars. Got out of racing at the end of 2012.
Yeah, because it's not an easy job.
It's a tough grind. There's a lot of travel. There's when you're not traveling, there's a lot of work involved in the shop. So it's a lot of hours every week. It's a long schedule, the longest in professional sports. Mm-hmm. So it is a grind. So I was kind of wore out by the end of 2012. I started looking for an exit strategy maybe in 2010. So chose real estate as a profession, as my exit out of NASCAR. Started real estate full-time in 2013. And in 2015, started Ankor Real Estate with Greg Biffle, our guest next week. And we're going to talk a lot more about the upbringing of Ankor, why we started Ankor, kind of what our mission is with Ankor, and some of those different things with Greg as our guest next week. So that's kind of a quick upbringing on me, a quick story, a quick history. Once again, we want you guys to engage with us. Ask us questions if you have questions for us about our histories, how we got here, what we've done. That was a very quick overview, but John, let's hear a little bit from you and how you got to where you are.
Racing and real estate along the way. And you probably have to be kind of old like me to understand the statement that old Lloyd Benston made years ago. as a vice presidential candidate, he said, "Who am I and why am I here?" And then went on to explain to that. So who am I and why am I here? I came to Charlotte in 1995 to work at the CBS affiliate, and there were two very strange quirks about my television career. First of all, when I came to Charlotte, it was very uncertain. So I was actually making more money mowing grass and building decks than I was anchoring in the 35th largest market in the country. That's just
very
a fact.
interesting. Yeah.
And also, as it came out, I honestly believe I'm the only person ever to host 2 national TV shows on a Sunday and in between go out and mow grass commercially for a living. And how that all came about was things weren't going particularly well in the local TV industry at the time. Sports were getting pushed out a little bit. And again, my landscape construction company was doing better here in Charlotte than my TV career was really going at the time. So I thought about giving it up. I had tried to get on at ESPN and didn't make it the final cut to work there in their racing broadcast division. So I went to my news director in Charlotte and I said, "Hey, look, I'm quitting. I'm going to go mow grass for a living." And she goes, "Well, no, you're not. I'm not going to let you." And I said, "Well, you got to let me because that's what I'm going to go do." So that was my plan. I was going to give up the TV business, and I was sitting at home one day and the phone rang. And it was somebody who said they were from the Fox Sports Network, and they wondered if I would be willing to host a pre-race show as part of the television package that was put together in 2001. And so I thought...
Was that actually Fox Sports then, or was that Speed Vision?
It was, no, Speed didn't exist. It was Speed Vision existed then, but Speed didn't. This was Fox Sports.
So I always get those all mixed up, so I'm glad that you clarified
and it's interesting the way, and along the course of the show, we'll go back through some of the history, Josh, because you bring up a very good point. The history of Speed Channel and Speed Vision is very interesting.
Yeah.
So the Fox guys called, and I thought it was a couple of my buddies messing with me, because would someone really call the lawnmower in Charlotte to do this national television show?
Talk about NASCAR, right?
Yeah. And they were for real, Josh, because I really sarcastically said, "Okay, tell me about this job." And they go, "Well, it's a 20-week handshake agreement to do a pre-race show on Fox Sports Net, not on Fox." So, okay, they would need the lawnmower from Charlotte to do that. So I thought, what a better time, because no one else would do it. No one else would take a 20-week handshake agreement, because we're supposed to end after 20 weeks. We're supposed to do NASCAR this morning and end after 20 weeks. Well, we've been doing it for 18 years now. This is our 18th year through Speed Vision, Speed Channel, and now Fox Sports 1 of doing that show. But along the way, I only worked weekends, so I had weekdays off. So I decided to get my real estate license, partnered up with my wife, Tracy, and Josh here at Anchor, and that's how we got here. And we are just very, very passionate, not only about racing television, but also about real estate. And we study the market every day, so we thought, what a great way to use our knowledge to connect with the fans and have some fun along the way, but racing to real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. So good that you mentioned that, racing to real estate. A couple quick things before we jump in. Just a note about this show weekly. So we will do a real estate update weekly. We're obviously going to cover a lot of racing news weekly. We look forward to that. Our sponsor, Duckworth, is going to do some giveaways throughout the first season here. So we're excited about that, and that's why we want you to engage with us. Make sure you ask us questions. Make sure you follow us on social. That's how you're going to find out what Duckworth is giving away. So we're excited about that. We will have, as John alluded to, some special guests on the show weekly. Next week will be Greg Biffle. We are excited to announce some guests after that, so make sure you follow on social media for those updates. And finally, every week, we will end the show with what we're going to call Clear to Close.
So a real estate term for you.
Yeah, real estate term. We love those 3 words. That's some of our favorite words in the real estate industry is clear to close.
When you hear that, it's good.
And we're going to use that as clear to close the show out. So that's where we'll give some special announcements or things that we got going on that we want to let the public know about. So looking forward to that. But let's jump right in here, John. Let's talk a little bit about real estate. Let's do some real estate updates. Spend a few minutes talking real estate.
Yeah, and something that's going on right now around the country, certainly we're thinking about the people that are down on the coast as Hurricane Florence is moving her way towards us. It's a very dangerous storm, and we hope everybody's okay with that, but it's on the minds of everybody, and a storm of this magnitude has repercussions everywhere, Josh, and it can also have big repercussions. As we are filming this show right now, that thing is moving towards the coast and people are gearing up, but it could have ripples throughout the real estate business.
Yeah, very well could. And just to remind folks, we don't film this show live.
Yeah.
We're filming this show, actually today is Tuesday, we're filming it. It's going to launch this evening. Traditionally, we will film it on a Monday, but with the race being rained out in Indy, we backed it up a day. But so yeah, the Hurricane Florence obviously wreaking a lot of havoc. Going to wreak a lot more here by the end of the week when it does make landfall. I think the big thing with real estate is if you are a buyer or a seller and you have a closing coming up in the next couple of weeks, pay attention to your insurance. I think that's one area that you will see a lot of delays, a lot of pushbacks in real estate closings. Look, the big insurance companies right now have stopped binding and writing policies. Until the hurricane is passed, until they can assess the damage of the hurricane, they're not going to issue any new policies until then. So if you have a closing next week and you're a buyer and you have not bound your insurance policy yet, reach out immediately to your insurance company, to your lender, to your real estate broker, and figure out what needs to be done, or if the closing needs to be rescheduled. I think that's one area that the hurricane will definitely...
Very good point, Josh, and very good to be proactive on that because you could save a lot of heartache over time. So that's somewhat of the bad news right now that we have a hurricane coming our way. But here's some good news, and basically put about the real estate market in this area. Each week on Racing to Real Estate, we're going to have a market update. But let's go really big picture here, Josh, and say what kind of investment real estate is for you and your family. Over the years, it's always been solid. It's always been one of the more solid things. But very simply put, on average, and we know that houses vary, things change, but very simply put, on average, if 1 year ago today you bought a home in the Charlotte metro area, most likely your value on that home would have gone up almost 8%. That is a solid investment and why people should be looking still at real estate. I know there's some concerns about interest rates going up. They are still at historic lows. So Josh, basically put, now is a great time to be involved in real estate, but there is one little problem right now with inventory in our market.
Yeah, so that's actually a big problem.
Yes, big, not little, but it's a big problem.
And it's can be geographic specific, but I think anybody that you would talk to in a major area of the country is going to have the same complaint, right? There is no inventory. It's extremely limited. I think I read over the weekend or early this week that there's a 2.2 month supply of inventory. And what that means for you that may not understand that is if you take every home that's listed in our market right now, 2.2 months supply in the Charlotte regional market, if you took every home that was listed today, did not list another single home in 2.2 months or roughly 9 or 10 weeks, every home would be sold and there would be nothing to buy. So economists say that an average healthy supply of inventory is 6 months. So we're at 2.2. So that's
about 1/3 of where we really should be for healthy supply.
And it's supply and demand, right? So obviously when supply is low, demand is high. So that's why it's a seller's market. The seller, we don't want to say they can name their price. It has to be realistic. Buyers are not dumb. But there's a lot of buyers out there that need to buy homes, and with supply being so low, it's driving prices up.
Yeah, and you can find yourself in a multi-bid situation. There's definitely things to do when you're in that multi-bid situation to make sure that your bid stands out. And people often debate, Josh, when is the best time during the year to buy or sell a home? And people always say, okay, when kids are out of school, people are out there shopping. But if you look at fall, winter, spring, times when kids are in school, and there's not that many people out there looking, it means that the people you're dealing with are more serious. There's not what you call just the lookers out there. This is a time of year when people need, if they are moving, they need to move. There's a reason. If they are looking, they need to buy or sell. There's a reason behind it. So there's never really a good or bad time throughout the year, per se, to buy or sell a home.
And I think another thing that can change that would be the area that you're buying in. I think us, if you look at what me and you and Tracy and Greg and all of us do here at Anchor Real Estate, we're a pretty small boutique firm, and we do a lot of business right here around Lake Norman. Well, Lake Norman is more of a luxury market. I don't really want to call it a vacation market or a second home market. But there are a lot of people that buy homes on Lake Norman for a vacation home or a second home. And so I think our market stays pretty good year-round for that reason, because really vacationers or second home buyers don't have to buy in the spring. But I think there's pocket areas the further south you go, once you get Huntersville, maybe down into Charlotte, there's a lot of pocket areas down there, which, obviously springtime is a great time to buy, and it's super busy during that time of year. So I think it's really, there's pocket areas that have good times and bad times of the year. But with inventory low, I don't know that there is a bad time.
Yeah, exactly. And also, again, another bottom line on our economy right now, several of the major growth indicators right now are hovering around 4.5%. Unemployment's at 4%. So it's a very strong economy. And almost all economic indicators that we looked at so far today and this week, we look at them every day, are just showing that the housing market's going to continue to grow. Values are going to continue to go up. And it's going to be healthy at least for another year, maybe 2 years down the future.
Yeah, I read something earlier, or maybe late last week or over the weekend, that from an economist that was predicting it would remain a seller's market until 2020, maybe even through 2020. Yeah. So, I think it's going to remain strong. There's no indications of it letting up anytime soon, which is good. So a lot of exciting stuff happening in real estate. A lot of exciting stuff happening in Anchor. We'll get through some of those cool things that we've done. I think in a seller's market, one thing is to position a seller to really be able to sell their home correctly. A lot of it is related to marketing.
Yes.
And that's something that I look forward to us talking about in future episodes, is some of the unique things that we have done.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time and focusing our energy on marketing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've done some pretty cool things. We've had some really cool videos, lifestyle videos where we've hired actors and actresses to come in and really portray a lifestyle at a home to help get it sold. So we've done some cool things, and we'll continue to talk about those as time goes on.
All right, so there's the real estate. Now it's going to be time in just a moment for the racing, but right now we're going to take a quick break and recognize our sponsor, Duckworth's. Duckworth's Grill and Tap House is your neighborhood restaurant. Good food, good friends, a huge selection of craft beers on tap, not to mention the weekly and daily food specials. 5 locations in the Charlotte metro area. Make sure to go down and check out your local Duckworth's. Josh Tucker, John Roberts, back with you once again. This is Racing to Real Estate. We already talked a lot about real estate and a lot about our firm here, Anchor Real Estate, but now we're going to focus a little bit on racing at the Cup level right now. It's an exciting time of the year. We are now in the playoffs, and we know who's going to be in the playoffs. We know what 16 drivers are going for it. And, Josh, this is a competitive time of the year, but it's also a time of the year when things get a little bit crazy, but let's talk about the stuff we know right now. Brad Keselowski is on a roll. 2 huge victories. He's got 2 crown jewel victories in the last 2 weeks. Southern 500, Brickyard 400.
Yeah, and peaking at the right time.
Yes, there's something to that.
I think there's a lot of momentum there, which really helps them going into Las Vegas. That team is pumped up. And, like you said, 2 crown jewel races with the Southern 500, the Brickyard. And also important to note, or cool to note, Roger Penske's first Cup win at the Brickyard.
Yeah, where he has dominated the open wheel stuff over the years.
I think I seen during the race yesterday 17 Indy 500 victories.
Yep.
I heard Brad mention in the post-race interview that Roger wasn't at the racetrack. I bet you he kicks himself in the butt for missing that one.
Exactly.
Pretty cool for them guys. That organization has been super solid for a long time.
Yeah, high-class organization as well.
Yeah. And another thing, just talking quickly about Indy, that kind of had me on the edge of my seat. I thought it was really cool to see Matt Kenseth win Stage 2.
It was.
And then not only did he win Stage 2, but he went out in the final stage and ran up front until they had their miscue on pit road.
Yep.
And I think the jack fell or something on pit road.
The team was competitive.
It was competitive. I think he was running 5th when he came in. And I was on I was on the edge of my seat thinking, is Matt Kenseth going to steal the show and win the Brickyard and put Jimmie Johnson or Alex Bowman out of the chase? Right?
Yeah,
that would have been a huge story, too. So cool to see him in that group become more competitive. Like I said earlier, I spent a lot of years at Roush. So still got a lot of friends there. I still know a lot of the management there. And it's good to see them slowly but surely trying to turn that corner and get their cars a little more competitive. But overall, I think it was an exciting race. I think I think the race went well, and really cool to see Brad win.
Yeah, and before we get ahead to Las Vegas, it's really interesting to look this week. We've talked to a lot of people about this, about what happened with Furniture Row Racing and owner Barney Visser, and the fact that we have a major league sport right now where the defending champion is talking about closing their doors. It's unprecedented.
Yeah.
And although when you look at NASCAR as a business model, as opposed to some of the other stick and ball sports, Josh, it's still a huge thing. You just don't expect to hear that your championship team is shutting down.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of a situation in the past where news that big, has broke. I mean, the closest thing I can relate to that, and I don't remember the year, but I think it was when Brad Keselowski won his championship shortly before, right around the time the chase started, Dodge announced their departure from the sport.
Yeah.
And I remember that being big news because Brad won the championship for Dodge.
In a Dodge, yeah.
And then Dodge left, the sport. So, but yeah, I mean, that's super unfortunate. It's hard enough in NASCAR to compete as a one-car team, let alone do it from Denver, Colorado. They're the only team.
It took guts for that crew to start like that.
They're the
kind
only
of
current
template.
NASCAR team that operates really west of the Charlotte market.
And they won the championship.
So, I hope that, I know they've made that announcement. I'd love nothing more for them to come back in a few weeks and say, hey, time out, we found a sponsor or something, but it doesn't look good for them at this point.
And here, Josh, here's what this reminds me of. Back in 1999-2000, we had lost a couple of drivers to accidents. Yeah. And as unfortunate as that was, it seemed like the racing just went on until the following year. We lost Dale Earnhardt, one of the most iconic drivers ever, at the Daytona 500 in 2001. And therefore, that made the wake-up call. That made the watershed moment where people took a look and said, okay, we've got to do something about safety. And since then, the safety has been tremendous. So now that we're losing a championship team because of the business model that has evolved, because we can't really fault NASCAR too much on this. NASCAR has done a lot of things to keep costs down. Can't really fault them. Right. But the business model of a NASCAR team has moved to a point where it has now cost us our championship team. And that could be a big enough hit to the sport to where people now back up and say, okay, wake-up call, watershed moment. Now we have to look at how seriously to cut the costs to keep guys like Barney Visser having an opportunity to get into the sport.
Yeah, and man, I wish I had a crystal ball, or I wish I knew. Everybody does, right? Yeah. I'm sure NASCAR wishes they knew. And
there's
I'm sure
not an easy solution.
It isn't an easy solution. What do you do? I know, a couple of years ago, when they implemented the charter system. Yep. And when at that time Furniture Row expanded to complement Erik Jones for Joe Gibbs, and they had to buy that charter. And I don't know that that's publicly disclosed. There were a bunch of rumors as to what that charter was worth.
Yeah, but probably millions. Though. I mean, you got to say millions.
Yeah. A couple of million was numbers that I had heard thrown around. And it kind of goes back to the real estate update with supply and demand. I think a couple of years ago there was probably more demand for those charters than there was supply. Now, with companies like BK Racing, going through their financial difficulties and closing their doors, doing the bankruptcy thing, I think that charter was bought for substantially less. Yeah. When you factor in all the equipment that was bought with it.
Yep. Supply and demand.
Yeah, so it's supply and demand. But yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I wish I did. It's going to take a lot of people much smarter than us to figure that out. But there is a problem.
Yeah, and here's what one of the problems is. If you just look at testing, all right, a couple of years ago, testing was getting out of control. People were spending too much money on testing. The small teams couldn't keep up with the big teams. So NASCAR tried to step in and help. They eliminated testing. But what did the team owners then do? They hired 8 engineers, 8 guys with PhDs in engineering. And now they do their own simulation.
Yeah, and they do their own testing, and they don't go to the racetrack.
And that's millions,
right?
That's millions.
They've spent more money now since testing was out or was not allowed in purchasing simulation equipment to test in their shop.
Yeah. Right? So can you save the owners from themselves?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we could probably talk for hours about that,
and we probably will continuing down the road.
I don't know how far we would get, but it is an interesting conversation. Let's switch gears a little bit, look towards Las Vegas. We do have the 16. Hot. It will be hot, yeah. We do have the 16 set for the chase. who stands out to you in Las Vegas? Obviously, we got the big three.
Yeah.
I think all three of them have won there. I know Harvick, this is the first year that Vegas is hosting 2 races in a year.
Yeah.
It's the first year that they will be in the playoffs, which is exciting for Las Vegas, I'm sure. I know Harvick won there this spring.
Yeah.
I believe Truex won the spring race last year.
Yeah, and Kyle's won there before.
Kyle won there a long time ago. I think Kyle won there in like 2009 or something. It's been a while ago.
Yeah, and since then there's been some track reconfiguration since then.
Yeah, so obviously the big three is always, they've been competitive all year long. And just, because Kyle Busch hasn't won at Vegas since 2009, I don't want anybody to think that he's going to go there and not be competitive. He's going to be fast.
Oh, because that team is competitive.
Yeah,
right now.
but who outside of the big three, all the talk all year has been the big three. Who outside of the big three do you think can sneak in there into Vegas and maybe they don't win, but maybe it's somebody further back in the 16 group playoff contenders that might make a name for themselves or might stand a chance of sneaking through past round 1 and round 2 of the playoffs?
Well, first of all, the way it's formatted, you get the win, you're through to the next round, then you can relax. And I am just waiting for Jimmie Johnson and the 48 team to turn that switch and figure it out. Now, Jimmie dominated that track for like a lot of other tracks.
If anybody's going to do it, Jimmie would be a good pick.
Yeah,
I
and
think
you were probably with him.
There.
You were probably were you with the team? Did you ever celebrate in Victory Lane?
I celebrated in Victory Lane at Las Vegas with Carl.
With
Edwards at Roush in 2008. We won that race in a dominating fashion. And that was a great time.
Yeah,
I don't believe with Jimmie. I think Jimmie won it 3 years in a row in the mid-2000s. And then I think he won it again maybe in 11 or 12 somewhere in there, but I wasn't on that team when he did it.
So just a little bit of background also. While Josh was celebrating with Carl Edwards' team, we were sitting on the desk for Victory Lane on Speed, and these guys were spraying champagne at us while we were live.
You got to do what you got to do. We want you guys
small
in the
world
celebration
scenario
as well. Yeah, absolutely. So I think Jimmie could be a good pick. Here's a guy that a 7-time champion. And I don't want to say he sneaked his way into the chase, but they obviously haven't been as competitive this year as they have in years past. It would be great to see that group. Obviously, I have a big place in my heart for that organization as well. I retired out of racing from there. I know Jimmie and Dale Jr.
It's funny to hear a guy like Josh say retired. He's so young, and he's saying retired, but
yeah. But after 11 seasons in there, it's that's a long career in NASCAR. But so it'd be cool to see Jimmie do it. I think another one that you have to kind of keep your eye out on, who has really upped his game since he won at Daytona, is Erik Jones.
Yeah.
Erik is kind of peaking at the right minute. His teammates, Denny dominated a lot of Indy yesterday. Yeah. So I think Joe Gibbs Racing, aside from Kyle, who is an obvious contender to go all the way to Homestead.
Yeah, he can just win at any time.
I think that Joe Gibbs in either Denny Hamlin or an Erik Jones could be almost an upset pick for somebody to go to Homestead as the 4th driver. I think both them guys are running very well. I think that either one of them could pull a win out at any time during the playoffs. So I think they're good ones to keep their eye out on, and I think a lot of people have their eye on Kyle Larson, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can play the game right. Ryan Newman did it a few years ago. He played the game right, never won, but made it to the championship 4 at the end of the season. So we're going to see some surprises. This is a really fun time of the year. We still got a lot of racing left to go. And each week here on Racing to Real Estate, we're going to give you our opinions. We also want your questions, too, about it. It's hashtag R2RE. Ask us questions about racing, real estate, or really anything else you want to.
Yeah, and so you can do that. Fun. Yeah, do that on social media. You can also email us. Yeah. So if you're not a social media geek or nerd like we are, and you stay away from the social media, email us comments, thoughts, questions to racing2realestate@gmail.com.
Yep.
We will monitor that email address daily. We will answer your questions or review your comments on air on future episodes. And we will have some giveaways from Duckworth, so we're excited about that. Real quick, John, before we get out of NASCAR and go clear to close, let's just talk real quick about a couple of hot rumors that are circulating through the NASCAR. And it's what we call silly season. Yeah. So any of you out there that are NASCAR fans, you've heard of silly season before. You know what it is. It's this time of year when sponsors start making announcements they're not returning. Drivers start making announcements that their future is uncertain with their current team.
And then when you have a major team fold at this point of the season,
So
it makes a big domino.
A few things that, obviously this weekend with the news of Furniture Row, that kind of stole some of the headlines. I think yesterday or maybe Saturday it broke. Chip Ganassi stating that Jamie McMurray will not be in the one car next year.
Yeah.
We had heard some rumblings of that, but Chip made it certain.
Yeah.
It sounded like they had offered Jamie a potential ride in the Daytona 500 and then to come into Chip Ganassi Racing in a leadership role. It'd be interesting to see if Jamie, takes Chip up on that kind of an offer, or does he have another opportunity with another team? Is he ready to hang the helmet up? I don't know, but I think that's an interesting rumor to follow. And then the big one is, where does Martin Truex go?
Well, we can say with pretty much certainty that very good sources have told us that Martin Truex and Cole Pearn will go together to the 19 car, and then Daniel Suarez will go over to the 95 car, which will then be a Joe Gibbs satellite operation. And the one thing that we're really waiting to hear exactly on is the rumor that Kurt Busch would be the driver of the number 1 car.
Yeah. So Kurt Busch would leave the 41, go to the number 1. Truex would leave the 78. It's shutting down, no replacement driver.
Yeah.
He would go to the 19. Suarez would go from the 19 to the 95 because Casey Kane has already announced he's done at the end of the year.
Yeah, and he's done, period.
He's
not gonna drive
retiring, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like he wants to focus on some sprint car racing, which is super cool. So there's some of those pieces to that puzzle. Another thing that'll be interesting to watch will be Trevor Bayne. I think there's a lot of uncertainty there on the 6 car future with Trevor Bayne. I've heard some rumors that he might be taking his Advocare sponsor to Junior Motorsports to compete in the Xfinity Series.
Interesting.
I don't know that,
Xfinity team.
Yeah, I don't know that anything is certain there. But the 6 car could potentially be open. So I don't know if Matt would have an interest in coming back to a full-time position. Who knows? But Matt. A lot of silly season stuff going on. So it'll be fun over the course of the next few weeks to see all that fold out and who goes where and
we'll get our answers. we'll get our answers.
That's the great thing about NASCAR is that you usually get them fairly quickly because these teams have to start prepping for Daytona.
Yep, got to get ready right now. It's a continuing circle.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, John. Well, let's go clear to close, man. This is our first episode, Racing to Real Estate, presented by Duckworth. I'm excited. Clear to close. This is a section at the very end of the show where we're going to make some announcements, some things that we got going on. So what's on your schedule, man? What's next week look like?
Okay, well, next week we're going to keep on digging with some of these, the listings that we have coming up. Just wanted to pat ourselves on the back a little bit. One of the sales we had just a little while back set a record for the highest price resale in Cabarrus County history. We're really happy about that. We got a couple of really big luxury homes coming up that we're about to list, and you're going to want to watch out for them. When they hit the market, they're going to be fantastic, and we hope they move really quickly. And also, once again, we got to keep an eye on this hurricane. It could have a big impact on the real estate market, but also our state, and hope everybody's friends and neighbors and family members and loved ones, that everybody's okay through this whole thing. Be safe.
Yeah, and quickly for me, I did have a trip scheduled to Wilmington, so I'm supposed to be going to Wilmington on Friday for a North Carolina Realtors Conference. I believe that is going to be canceled. Hopefully my hotel will refund my stay. So yeah, no Wilmington trip for me next week, meaning that I might be on the podcast with you and Greg.
Let's hope.
So that would be cool. I was originally slated to miss next week due to my vacation or business travels to Wilmington. That probably won't happen. And quickly, I just want to throw out there, make sure you follow Anchor Real Estate as well on social media. We do an event at Anchor Real Estate once a month called Wind Down Wednesday. It's always a fun time. We engage the local community. We have a local business partner up with us every month to host that event. And we believe October's is going to be really special. So make sure you follow us for that. And we got Vegas coming up, we got Vegas coming up. So excited about that for the weekend. Triple header with Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup.
Yep.
So, man, this is it. Racing to Real Estate. It's been fun for the first episode, John. And we look forward to 11 more to come.
Yep. Thanks for coming along for the ride, everybody. And we'll see you next Tuesday.